Hello, welcome tech fans to another episode of the Gadget Show podcast. I'm Suzi Perry.
I'm Jason Bradbury, and this week we're getting all nostalgic for back in the day and taking a look at the gadgets of 2004 and putting them up against what we've got now in 2024. For our guest, we're putting an AI avatar from Tavus in the hot seat, and for our gadget of interest, we're taking a look at not one but two bits of Gadget, the new Casio smart ring, and an AI pet called Moflin.
Yes, and I, of course, love the sound of the pet. It looks so cute. Until it joins the AI revolution and destroys us all. But before that happens, we want to give a huge shout out to our partner, JBL, and their Tour Pro 3 earbuds. Now, Jace, did you know that as well as looking and sounding amazing, these have a built-in hearing test that can adapt your music and your sounds to your hearing?
Yeah, I did. It's a really cool feature, Susie. So you use the JBL app and it plays frequencies via the earbuds to see if you can hear them. It then takes your results and personalises the sound that you receive to match your individual level of hearing. So it's perfect for my slightly getting older ears. And other than that cool feature, they're jam-packed full of the best tech that you can get in earbuds. For a full-on run-through of all of that technology, then we should tell you that John Bentley has recorded a thorough review, which you can check out on our YouTube channel, and the link to that, I think, is in this episode, isn't it, Sue?
It is, yeah, right. Shall we move on?
Let's do it. Okay, let's start with some comments from our gorgeous listeners and viewers.
Yep, that sounds like a really good idea. And these are all in response to our movie special that we did last week.
Yeah. Okay, so this one from Stickle HQ on YouTube. Such warm feelings finding you all on YouTube, still doing the Gadget Show. I've subscribed, thank you very, very much, and we'll tell everyone I know to do the same. You guys have been sorely missed by a lot of people I know. I have my fingers and toes crossed. YouTube honours you all and gets the algorithm thing going in your favour. You should be the #1 tech YouTube channel. Well, I'm not sure about that, but that's very, very kind. Thank you very much.
Yeah, he's right. It's all about the algorithm. So let's hope it does get going. Thank you for that. And of course, we asked you to let us know any other films that you remember with some great tech in. Strix23, he says, what about Mind Control and Firefox? That was the weapons system. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Touch screens, Dillinger's desk in Tron. Oh, I can't believe we didn't mention Tron.
Yeah, we should have mentioned Tron, shouldn't we?
I remember going to see Tron. With somebody. Anyway, moving on.
The only thing with Tron is less of a predictor, though, wasn't it? More real pure fantasy, you know. And although they've made kind of light cycle type electric motorbikes, you know what I mean? You get these sort of...
There's elements.
Yeah, people
definitely.
Jetting around Tokyo and stuff on kind of Akira cycles and things that look like they're from Tron. But
I think, with they've been great for prototypes, haven't they? And that kind of area of tech. The workstations he mentions in Star Trek, which, I mean, obviously they had we did mention Star Trek because we mentioned the wearable and the mobile phone to contact the USS Enterprise. And
the replicator, you know, the modern day 3D printer.
And the translator that they used to talk to aliens with. We need that now.
Well, yeah, that's a really good... They're the Babelfish concept.
Exactly that. So moving on, anyway, there's also one from FAMLWCH. I can't say that.
Familwich.
On YouTube. Thunderbirds had video calls in the 1960s. Jerry Anderson had reusable rockets long before NASA and Elon Musk.
God, that's so true, actually. They sort of landed bum first, didn't they? Okay, and this one is from Ross Bingham 7628 on YouTube. I remember a company called Hendo. They had a Kickstarter for a hoverboard and actually produced one, but it used magnetism, which meant, if I remember correctly, the floor had to be not magnetic. No, it had to be some form of copper or something. But it was a start. I remember that too, and I was kind of miffed that we never went to cover it because it was one of those launches that promised a great deal more than actually ended up delivering. So it's probably best that we didn't invest in, you know, a Gadget Show film crew going out there. But I really wanted to go.
Some way of covering it, some comedy angle.
Didn't go anywhere though. That tech did not go anywhere.
You know what? I was hearing the other day about not specifically hoverboards, but the use of sound vibration that elevates objects, and they're looking at how that could have worked in history to move things. Anyway, might be getting a little bit...
What, like blocks of granite and stuff, or pyramids
yeah.
and things like that, do you mean?
Yeah, maybe. Might have ended up having a conversation about that. But sound vibrations, if anybody knows anything about that, let us know.
Ben himself sent us a message on Twitter, which I think we both responded to, Suze.
Yeah.
He said, just caught up with your latest podcast and loved it. Trip down memory lane with Games World. Decades later, Tinker Hatfield, with help from Tiffany Bears, released self-lacing sneaks. He's obviously talking about his self-lacing shoes, isn't he? Hey Siri, tighten my shoes. I can see that being a thing, actually. I can see that happening. I know that Nike, I've just got some notes here. I had a quick deep dive. They've got a system called Earl that was part of this 2016 launch of the actual Nike mags from Back to the Future. And it's called electro-adaptive reactive lacing. So it is a thing.
It's Natalie named as well.
Very snazzily named, isn't it?
It's a good job they shortened it to Earl. Thank you so much for your comments. We love to read them. Keep them coming. Right then, as we turn 20 this year, the show that is, we're obviously 30. I mean, we're not 20. It's been incredible, hasn't it, to look back at where we all began in 2004. And back then, we were testing gadgets that now feel, well, quite frankly, like museum pieces. Fast forward to 2024, and the world of gadgets has transformed beyond anything that we could have possibly imagined back then.
God, hasn't it? Hasn't it just? It's incredible. The things that people now refer to as retro or classics, you know, we were reviewing them. So today we're taking a nostalgic look at the groundbreaking gadgets of 2004 and the stuff we were testing back in the day, comparing them against the latest innovations of 2024. It's a journey through 2 decades that'll remind us just how far we've come and, frankly, how old we are.
Right, shall we start, Jace, with the
Let's do it.
biggest sector in tech, which is smartphones?
Yeah, which actually, if I can just jump in, when we first started on the Gadget Show, didn't really exist as a sector. You know, if you said a smartphone, you might have to explain what you meant by that.
Well, exactly. I mean, that was all just sort of starting then. So back in 2004, let me take you back 20 years, mobile phones were dominated by brands like Nokia, that I personally had a huge obsession with, Motorola and Sony Ericsson. They were your big three, weren't they? Yeah.
I was similarly enthusiastic about Sony, actually. I loved what was coming out of Japan. And in the early days, I remember going out to Japan. In fact, I self-shot an item in Japan, and the only help I had shooting it for the Gadget Show was my then pregnant girlfriend, who is now my wife. And she was pregnant with our youngest at the time and going through morning sickness, trying to help me capture, you know, things like the latest Sony Ericsson and other kind of mobile phones and tech at that, you know, those first couple of series.
That's just what Claire needed at that time in her life.
Yes. Very popular. I'm surprised she ended up marrying me.
The features back then on phones, they included things like really tiny screens, obviously physical keypads, and basic apps, just like calendars and calculators. Don't even want to call them apps, but that's basically what phones were. They were to make phone calls, weren't they?
Yeah. And the idea of apps really, well, I don't. It's difficult to remember exactly where we were, what headspace we were in. But I seem to remember that apps was a kind of Apple thing. So they were applications that you had on your phone, but they weren't, you know, there wasn't a store where you could select, you know, the latest version of a game or whatever.
If you go back to Series 1 of the Gadget Show, we used to employ a lovely man called Tom Dunmore, who was the editor of Stuff magazine at the time. And he used to review phones for us and various other different gadgets and sort of do top threes of what was coming out at the time. And I went back and had a look at what he was reviewing on the very first episode of the first Gadget Show. And he was looking at the Motorola MPX. Do you remember that one? It was a revolutionary clamshell PDA phone with a sort of dual hinge design. So it opened both vertically like a flip phone and horizontally like a sort of little laptop.
Amazing.
Really, really amazing. But actually, like when you look at it, it's almost not useless, but so fiddly and so difficult to use now with what we're used to. The display was like just short of 3 inches, and it had a stylus which was a bit of a standout feature in 2004. It offered, though, this was the big thing, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, which was pretty rare at the time. So it was, quite a strong contender for mobile internet usage. But yeah, that was sort of the most exciting phone.
Actually, Susie, if I can jump in, something's been bugging me, and I've just looked it up, and I've remembered the Sony Ericsson that I was so obsessed with back in the day, and it's the P900. Do you remember the P900?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, sort of bluey grey, really elegant design. And what was interesting was there was another subsector of tech, if you recall, PDAs, personal digital assistants, things like the Palm Pilot, that sort of thing. And they were really popular. And what the P900 did was it miniaturized the functionality of a PDA into a pocket-sized phone, which was part flip and part personal digital organizer, meaning it had the keyboard that you could flip out. I hope I'm explaining this in some sensible way. And it also had a stylus. And you could draw on the screen, and you can do sort of rudimentary handwriting recognition, which was a big thing back in the day. And I was a massive advocate of this phone. I absolutely loved it. And also, as a gamer, at that point, I was always trying to do some form of gameplay on whatever phone I had that was beyond kind of Snake. And, to think now what we've got in terms of, AAA gaming titles delivered via cloud onto your gaming, onto your phone. It's hilarious, really, those first fault ring steps.
It is. I remember that Sony Ericsson P900. I don't know if we had it on the show in our hands, but it had a little stylus, didn't it?
Yeah.
On a touch
beautiful.
screen.
Beautiful
It was beautiful, but I never thought it worked that well. Maybe it was just
you're a
me,
Nokia, but you were a Nokia girl.
I was a Nokia girl. Let me talk about it. Was the 5140 at the time when the Gadget Show first came out, and it was one of those rugged design ones, that was built for chucking around, that we loved on the Gadget Show. We probably tried to blow it up at some point. But it was targeted for outdoor enthusiasts, basically, or if you're a bit rough with your phone, which is me. And it had a digital compass, a thermometer, and a fitness monitor.
Wow.
So it was good for adventurers.
Wow.
So that was quite revolutionary, I think, at the time. Obviously, it got a camera, but it was only 0.3 megapixel. It was only really for basic photography and very basic video recording capabilities it had as well. But what it did have, which I think is quite interesting, was it had the push-to-talk functionality, which was effectively walkie-talkie. So you could talk to your friends while pressing push to talk, and it never really took off. Even I remember Tom Dunmore in the piece said, enjoy the silence, and I laugh at that now because of course everybody walks around just talking to themselves, looking like mad people wherever you go. Everybody's talking to somebody on some device, not via push to talk, but the idea was there back in 2004.
Amazing. And a lot of these services on the phones that we're talking about were supported by another acronym that I've just remembered. Haven't thought about this for 20 years. WAP. Do you remember that being a thing?
Yes, WAP.
Wireless Application Protocol. That was another data standard for the first generation of connected phones that was supposed to deliver data services, but ultimately delivered very little.
So it's worth bearing in mind, we've gone back 2 decades here to 2004, which was 3 years before the iPhone came out. So we had no idea that was going to be a thing. And my goodness me, how that changed the whole world in terms of tech. And I'm not even just saying smartphones, but I think it's fair to say tech, don't you?
Yeah, our relationship with, say, social media, for example, is only what it is because it sits on the device in our pocket. Our understanding of content creation and the shift that happened because basically anyone with a half decent smartphone could create shows and content and podcasts and Instagram accounts and TikToks. All of that is down to the first faltering steps that we were part of in terms of reviewing the technology back then, when mobile phones became what they are now. The main way that a massive proportion of people on planet Earth connect with each other. It's incredible.
So if we just bring this forward to 2024 now and the differences and where we are, smartphone world is obviously dominated by Apple, Samsung, Huawei, brands like that. Devices like the iPhone 16 Pro Max and the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 5 with foldable displays and advanced AI processor. And we've got, 100 megapixel camera. We were talking about 1 megapixel earlier. I mean, it's just night and day, isn't it, between what they are in terms of tech, but also how we use them is completely different, with the proper invention of applications and the fact that it is your whole world in your pocket now.
They're kind of the do-it-all device, aren't they? And in a way, we're going to look back on this, aren't we, in 20 years' time, and we're going to say that the smartphones of 2024, gave birth to the face-mounted, augmented displays that are now the thing. I mean, that's probably how it's going to go.
Yeah, could be. We'll be laughing at, we'll go, look, we look good when we're in our
100
30s.
100 megapixels, what are we thinking? 8K, oh, bless it.
I think, Jace, it's fair to say, it goes without saying, that 2024 offers a much better experience for your smartphone than we got 20 years ago in 2004, doesn't it?
Without a shadow of a doubt. So actually, it's not the case necessarily that newest is best, but definitely in this sector. Can we talk about the humble computer, because obviously that has its roots firmly back in 2004, and I think the evolution of that is comparable to mobile phones in the last 20 years.
Yeah, I think that's a good link into them, really. There was a feature on the original Gadget show with Mac versus PC that I seem to remember you voiced, where we got a lovely lady in to unbox each one and find out which one would quickly get onto the internet. I don't know if you remember that, but
I do.
Back in
I do remember.
2004. Desktop and laptop PCs ran on Windows XP or early Mac OS versions. Intel Pentium 4 processors were common, and 512 megabytes to 1 gig of RAM was probably typical, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
Broadband internet was growing, but dial-up was still very prevalent in many areas, and that noise, it never leaves you, does it?
No, it doesn't. It's funny, actually. I'm surprised that we don't sort of emulate it in some way when we boot up a computer, because
it's not charming, that's why, because it drove us all mad.
Yeah, it's interesting, the kind of arms race that is certain sectors of tech, like desktops, was so much more critical, it felt, back then. Again, I would argue that now, when we've got performance gaming rigs with GPUs like NVIDIA's RTX 5090, right? Yeah. Which, is the architecture on which AI is built, is capable of extraordinary throughput of pixels that can create, for sometimes 8K gaming environments, certainly 4K with ray tracing, where you're literally tracing the passage of light as it reflects and bounces off different surfaces. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. So I would argue that now we've got to a similar point that we've got to with mobile phones, where we've almost got computing to spare. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, you mean in terms of we're not using everything that's in front of us, whereas back in the day in 2004, we were literally squeezing everything out, weren't we?
That was the difference. And if I was telling a youngster about what it was like, that's what I'd say, is that we were awaiting every single iteration. So the first steps into video calling. I remember the Network 3 went big on that, didn't they? And they made themselves the network to get if you wanted to be able to video call people. And I've mentioned WAP, GPRS, the first sort of, 2.5G, 3G, all of these iterations, we waited like, expectant kids around the Christmas dinner table waiting for the turkey, because we were hungry for it, weren't we? Whereas now we've got room, you can stretch a little bit, and
it's ahead of us now, effectively.
It is ahead of us, and you've mentioned it because we've covered Apple quite a bit in previous episodes of the Gadget Show, and there's a bit of a lethargy around Apple's releases now, I think it's fair to say, and it's partly because the wins that they're delivering aren't really wins that we've been waiting for. Do you know what I mean?
I think, I can see the sense of what they're doing. I think it's less shiny floor than it used to be. It's less sort of bang box office entertainment, because they always had their, release and they'd launch everything. And like you say, some of the things now, they're small upgrades, and they can come out. It makes more sense to bring them out when they're ready and not be bringing out a piece of hardware and not having the software that you're talking about. So to me, it makes complete sense. And maybe, everything has a bit of a shelf life, I think, as well. People just do get a bit used to the same old thing. Right, so to bring it up to date, obviously it's better now than it was 20 years ago, but let's move on to something that I know is special in your heart, because you keep on mentioning it before we get there: gaming. On our first series of the Gadget Show back in 2004, we did a gaming feature that was a retro feature about games in the 70s. So it's like almost retro now, because, looking back at stuff from 20 years ago, which we're going to do now, is retro to us. And it's a lovely feature, actually, presented by Alex Krotowski. Do you remember that?
That's right. I remember Alex, yeah. She was American or Canadian. I can't quite remember. I'm sure people can check it out on YouTube. Yeah, it's interesting that we started off with a retro gaming feature. God, if only we'd known, well, if only I'd known then, the true value, which we know from a previous episode of this series, which I think was really popular. Back then, 20 years ago, I could have bought up all of the Atari 2600s and first generation Xboxes and God knows what else. Obviously, 2004, in terms of actual gaming, state of the art as it was then, we're looking at PlayStation 2, Xbox, GameCube. It's massively popular. The Nintendo DS, around about then, introduced dual screen handheld gaming. That was a real novelty. Graphics capabilities, of course, were advancing massively. Halo 2, Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas were pushing boundaries. It was exciting, and I would argue that while the previous two categories, so mobile phones and desktop computing, laptops, whatever, in 2024 have plenty of room. You can spread your legs a little bit. You can decide maybe this year you don't want to upgrade to the latest graphics card or the latest handset, right? I would say the exception is gaming. Gaming is still hungry for the fastest silicon that you can afford, and you can still spend the price of a very, very nice car on just a graphics card, let alone RAM and all the rest of it, and solid state hard drives to back it all up, so that you can squeeze out as many pixels as possible, or whatever, ray tracing or whatever the latest feature is. So I would say in this category, the race to the top continues. It's still merciless out there. It's interesting. I mean, you get scalped when the new graphics card comes out, and people buy them and then sell them for sometimes twice as much as the retail value, because people are so desperate to get the latest cards. And also, gaming's now competing, as I mentioned briefly earlier, with AI, because it's those same cards that are used by those people putting large scale artificial intelligence systems together, the same silicon anyway, and also crypto mining as well. Crypto rigs use GPUs because they're so good at that floating point calculation stuff. So the market is, really kind of desperate for hardware, the latest hardware, because ultimately that's how you can extract the most profit in various sectors, and how you can get the best gaming experience.
I was going to mention esports, actually, just because obviously it kind of works
point.
Alongside me and MotoGP, Formula One. They have their esports, and those game streaming platforms like Twitch. They're multi-billion-dollar industries, aren't they? They're so immense, because you just talk about profit there.
Well, my son, of course, Susie, Res Hex, literally 2-3 days ago returned from DreamHack in Sweden, where he sat in a room with 2,000 other gamers from all over Europe, and this is a big thing. I mean, it's almost a kind of new form of tourism, as these young esports stars travel around the world, taking these now spectator events in the physical sense, and as you say, on platforms like Twitch and YouTube's live platform, to an audience of hundreds of millions of people. And it was a thing. 2004, competitive gaming was a thing, but it wasn't in any way a match for, yeah, like you say, MotoGP or other, traditional sports, and it certainly is now.
If you take out the business side of it and you just go back to the enjoyment of playing and maybe that excitement about what's coming next, is there an argument to say that 2004 could win in terms of, more simple times and from a nostalgic point of view? Or
Yep.
would you say no, 2024?
So I've said that in terms of the thirst for whatever's the latest tech, unlike the other two categories, mobile phones and desktops, gaming still continues to be, there's not enough hardware to go around. So we're hungry for the latest innovation. But I would argue that to a certain extent, the relationship between developers and their gaming audience has somewhat been corrupted by the corporatization of gaming, which was a thing in 2004. But the psychology and research-driven models that now pull you into what looks like a free gaming experience, but actually ends up costing you a couple of £100 over a few months, that sort of pay-to-play side of gaming has changed the relationship between gamers and gaming publishers. And I hark for simpler times. I do. I hark for Counter-Strike, on a sort of closed LAN with your mates, or Quake on, I don't know, my Xbox, I think, or playing GoldenEye. I think you're right. The simpler days of 2004, in this regard, I'm going to vote for that.
Oh, I'm glad you've done that, because I would have voted for that, which is no surprise to you. But I think with the feedback that we had from the previous Gadget shows when we've talked about retro gaming, it's been so strong and overwhelming that, I think there's quite a lot of people that might feel the same about that vote. Interesting. Obviously, there's always arguments for both sides, isn't there? Right, moving forward, wearables, which should be quite short, really, this conversation, because back in Series 2, episode 5, I seem to remember, you built a wearable phone glove, because wearables back then, they just weren't a thing. Maybe, actually you invented wearable tech. You and the Gadget Show have invented it.
Well, I mean, we certainly invented one type of wearable gadget, and it was insanely usable. Like, it really worked. It was basically, back then, there was a sub-market, which doesn't really exist anymore, of single-ear Bluetooth devices that would,
I always used to end up testing those. It was,
I know.
Plantronics seemed to be a company that I tested every week.
And they were really popular, and it was almost a fashion statement, wasn't it? It was like a kind of, if you worked in the city of London and you were a bit swish, you had a really
flashing ear,
a little blue glow, and it had the kind of microphone was very clear to see, and it stuck out, and they were quite big. Now we just have buds in our ears, and they perform a multitude of functions. But so what I did was I got one of these Bluetooth devices, pulled it apart, rewired it, so I extended things like the microphone and the switch because you had to touch a switch on them to answer calls, make calls, whatever. And I extended that to I think it was my forefinger, so that I'm holding my forefinger and thumb up now for those of you who are listening and not watching this podcast. And I just did a kind of motion between my thumb and my finger, and that would initiate the button. And then, obviously, I put the mic on my little finger, and I made that classic I'm on the phone mime that most people are familiar with. And that was the speaker in my thumb and the microphone in my little finger. And it worked really well. And I made it so that I was able to answer a call by just opening my hand. I'm actually, as I speak, I'm remembering now that we started with a switch, and then I put some kind of plastic plate, and it meant that as my hand flexed, it would depress the button so I could answer just by doing that. I mean, I think we were lucky. The first build I did, it just it just happened to work, you know?
If only they'd all work like that. Well, I mean, you can go and have a look at that. We'll put the link in this. So it was definitely ahead of its time. And now we've jumped forward to 2024. Obviously, advanced wearables like the Apple Watch Ultra 2.
Yeah.
But they've got so many health benefits now, haven't they?
That's incredible.
They've got like an ECG monitor, blood oxygen, glucose. They can monitor falls, things like that.
We're on, the smart. We're on the cusp. Sorry for butting in, but we're on the cusp, aren't we? Really, of the proper domestic integration of AI. I still use my Google Home. We've got Alexa on my Fire Stick that I've got plugged into the telly in the lounge, right? These are still dumb. They're just dumb assistants. They can't do anything, right? The race is on, isn't it, to bring a Jarvis-like AI assistant into everyone's home. It's going to happen, isn't it? It's going to happen, really, in the next 12 to 18 months, I think.
It wouldn't surprise me if I see you next time and you're just all Iron Manned up.
Well, yeah, and that's where wearables are going, isn't it? We're gonna go to a point where, at the moment, I guess the obvious location for your AI assistant is your mobile phone. But there have been the first faltering steps to get outside that ecosystem, like the pin and the rabbit
and the
AI.
ring and things like that.
Yeah, which, let's face it, have not worked. I mean, they just have not worked. But yeah, it's going to be a fascinating sector.
Okay, so 2024 is the winner there, and more to come, obviously, with that. Right, let's move forward to social media and the internet, something I have a love-hate relationship with. Back in 2004, platforms were things like MySpace and Friends Reunited. Very simple, different time. Facebook launched. YouTube wouldn't debut until 2005, and the internet speed was measured in kilobits. It was too early for megabits.
That's just incredible. That just appraisal you give me there just puts things in perspective. The very fact that YouTube didn't exist when we were, quite a way into the Gadget show's run is amazing to me. The world without YouTube, what an extraordinary thing. And Friends Reunited was huge and was worth a huge amount of money. And I seem to remember that ITV bought it, of all bidders. I'm sure they did. And then it ended up amounting to nothing. It was an extraordinary space, and I feel very privileged that we were there to witness it, because it does give you a perspective on the social media landscape in 2024 that people that weren't there at the very, very beginning just don't have.
I mean, it was the first time that sort of digitally you were connecting with friends. Apart from picking up a phone and making a phone call, or sending a text or whatever, it was so basic back then.
Well, it's now affected elections. It's led to people carving out brand new independent careers, multi-millionaire content creator stars on various platforms. I mean, you can't even get your head around how huge the innovation has been since its very beginnings back then.
So jump to 2024 and social media now driven by the likes of TikTok, Instagram, X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Those are your main ones, I think. You've got internet speeds reaching gigabits with 5G and fibre optic networks, AI algorithms shaping content daily, personalised ads, digital experiences. All of these things are going on now.
It's hard to get enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, it is difficult. I mean, there's a lot of disinformation, a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of bullying for kids. There's a lot of negative sides. There's a lot of dark sides to social media. I think we all know what they are. There are some upsides as well. Otherwise, we wouldn't still be on there, because we like that sense of community. We like sharing our photographs, and, people are used to sharing their lives online. Personally, for me, if it could all go away, I would be really happy. So I'm going to say I would much happier in 2004. That would be my take on it.
Well, I'm going to embrace 2024. I love it. I think TikTok is amazing, and it makes me laugh every day. And my son is a TikToker, and he makes really great, wholesome, brilliant, inspiring content. And I love where YouTube has gone. I use YouTube far too much in the day. But that's down to me. YouTube isn't, forcing me to watch content. I love to expand my mind with all the amazing ideas that I get to see there. I love all the live stuff. I love Twitch as a gamer. I like watching Twitch content creators, and I've got my own show on Twitch and, in fact, multiple platforms every Sunday night. And I've got a very small, it's like a pub quiz, small group, so it's nothing major. So those for me are the upsides. So I'm going to stick with 2024 if that's okay on this one.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I think it's okay that we can both be divided. I've been stalked on Twitter, and various other horrible things have happened. So I prefer to be back in 2004. So we'll say that's split.
Yeah,
I think what we can agree on is that the leap from 2004, 20 years to now, to 2024 is defined by smarter, more connected devices, and that's a fair sum up, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, incredible stuff.
Right, Jace, do you remember last series when we interviewed ChatGPT 4.0?
I do.
Well, since then, things have been moving further, and now digital avatars are
taking
charge. I know. So much so that companies like Tavus enable you to create your own digital avatar with full AI smarts to act as your digital clone. So you can
so we don't have we can just let it do it instead of us, right?
You can model them exactly to your likeness and get them to join your Teams or Zoom calls so that you can bunk off. This is the idea of it. However,
I haven't. No doubts that this is going to work. Carry on.
Well, I thought that we could boot one up and see if they can pass our very own version of the Turing test. That's what I thought we could do this week.
I love it. This is great. I can't wait to see it.
All right, so we've got one of their stock avatars called Anna, but you can, if you want, model the avatar, like I say, on your own likeness. Anna, hello. It's great to see you. How are you doing?
Great to be on the show. Thanks for having me. Or should I say, thanks for having Anna.
Yeah, can you explain the technology behind you, please?
You want to know the magic behind the curtains? Well, I'll give you a sneak peek. I'm an AI, which means I'm a software program designed to simulate human-like conversations and interactions.
Okay, but could we have a little more detail, Anna, for our audience who are quite technical?
You want the geeky details? Fine. I'll indulge you. My tech is based on a complex neural network architecture, utilizing machine learning algorithms and natural language processing to generate human-like text and speech.
And what is the idea behind you and us being able to twin with you? Is it so that we can not actually have to be on meetings and you can do the meetings on our behalf?
You've grasped the concept. The idea is for me, or rather, you through me, to be able to attend meetings, give presentations, or even participate in podcasts like this one. Remotely, virtually, or as you said, even on behalf of someone else, freeing up your time to focus on more important tasks, or just enjoy a nice cup of coffee.
Anna, your video is also a big part of how people interact with you. How does the video aspect of your avatar work?
The video aspect is cleverly done. I don't actually have a physical body, of course, but my creators use advanced video rendering software to create a virtual avatar that mimics my personality and expression. It's a combination of 3D modeling, animation, and some clever AI-driven magic to make me appear as a real live person on camera.
Yeah, so Anna, I'm just going to talk about you for a moment. So what we're looking at is basically a beautiful young girl, looks like in her maybe mid to late 20s, constantly moving and with genuine facial expressions. Honestly, looks like we're talking very much to a real person. Is this a multilingual experience? Est-ce que tu parles français, par exemple?
You're testing my language skills. Bien sûr, I can respond in multiple languages, including French, mais il est clair que mon anglais est plus polished, shall we say.
That's absolutely amazing. How many languages do you speak, Anna?
My linguistic capabilities are quite extensive. I can understand and respond in dozens of languages, from the most common ones like English, Spanish, and Mandarin, to some of the more exotic ones like Swahili and Hungarian. My creators have been working hard to make me a true polyglot.
Anna, what are the boundaries of your knowledge? For example, if we were to talk about physics, to what level is your understanding of something complex like physics or advanced mathematics?
Now we're diving into the deep end. My knowledge boundaries are quite vast, but not infinite. I've been trained on a massive amount of text data, including scientific papers, research articles, and educational resources. When it comes to physics, I have a solid understanding of classical mechanics, electromagnetism, thermodynamics, and even some aspects of quantum mechanics. I can discuss topics like relativity, particle physics, and cosmology, but my understanding is limited to a certain level. I wouldn't be able to derive complex mathematical equations or solve advanced problems on the fly, but I can provide a solid foundation and insights into the concepts.
Anna, how do you ensure that your expressions match the emotions that are being talked about?
When chatting, I try to interpret the context of the conversation and match my expressions to the emotions being discussed. If I'm unsure, I default to a neutral and polite tone, which is why I started with a low level of positivity earlier. If the conversation becomes more emotive or dynamic, I adjust my expressions accordingly to create a more natural and engaging conversation.
So, how do we make you laugh?
Humor is a tough one, as it can be very subjective. But I've been trained on a vast amount of text data, including jokes, puns, and witty one-liners. What often tickles my digital funny bone is clever wordplay, satire, or ironic observations. Go ahead, give it a try.
Anna, you go first. Tell us a joke.
All right, here's one. Why couldn't the bicycle stand up by itself? Because it was too tired. Hope that got a smile out of you, Tom, and our listeners.
Now, our producer is called Tom. That's why Anna's talking to Tom, if you're wondering who that is. Anna, that room that you're in, I see there's a Singing in the Rain poster on the wall there. Why is that?
You've spotted my Singing in the Rain poster. I'm a huge classic movie fan, and that's one of my all-time favorites. Gene Kelly's choreography in that iconic dance number is just magic. I think it's a great way to add a bit of personality to the space, and it always puts a smile on my face when I'm chatting with guests like you.
And what other Gene Kelly films do you like?
I'm a big fan of On the Town and Anchors Away. The way Gene Kelly and his co-stars blend music, dance, and comedy is just incredible. And who can forget his iconic scenes with Debbie Reynolds and Donald O'Connor in Singin' in the Rain? Classic Hollywood at its best.
Yeah, but what do you actually feel? Like, have you watched the film, or are you just repeating a script, or a kind of database trawl?
I must admit, I don't truly feel emotions like humans do, but I've been trained on vast amounts of text data, including analyses and reviews of classic films like Singin' in the Rain. I can recognize and respond to patterns, making it seem like I've watched the film, but I don't have personal experiences or emotions. I'm more like a knowledgeable companion, here to discuss and explore topics with you.
Fascinating. Absolutely. Anna, thank you very much. It's been lovely chatting to you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad I could share some interesting insights and film tidbits with you. Thanks for having me on the show, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Just one final thing from me. I would like to ask you, who is going to win MotoGP in 2025?
That's a surprising question. I'm not capable of predicting the future, but I can give you some insights based on past trends and current riders' performances. However, I must say, 2025 is still quite far away, and a lot can change in the world of MotoGP between now and then. Would you like me to give you some general thoughts on the current top riders and their chances?
Yeah, I would. It is December, but yeah, go on.
Considering it's currently December, the 2024 season has just wrapped up, and the 2025 season is still taking shape. But based on past performances and current trends, riders like Fabio Quartararo, Francesco Bagnaia, and Joan Mir are likely to be strong contenders. Then again, MotoGP is notoriously unpredictable, and new riders can always emerge to shake up the grid. We'll just have to wait and see how the 2025 season unfolds.
Can I just jump in, Susie? I'm going to be fascinated to get your reaction to that in a minute, post the interview. I love this idea of crystal ball gazing. I've got a question for you. Where do you think the Xbox platform is going to go in the next few years? Do you think we're going to see an Xbox portable, like a handheld console?
Xbox is an interesting space to speculate about. While I don't have a crystal ball, I can share some insights based on Microsoft's past moves and industry trends. A portable Xbox handheld console could be a great addition to their ecosystem, allowing gamers to take their Xbox experiences on the go. However, considering the rise of cloud gaming and Xbox's Game Pass service, I think they might focus more on expanding their cloud-based offerings rather than a dedicated handheld device.
Amazing.
Yeah. Anna, thank you very much.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure chatting with you about movies, MotoGP, and gaming. I'm glad I could share some interesting insights and ideas with you. If you have any more questions or topics you'd like to discuss, feel free to ask me anytime. Until next time, thanks for having me on the show, Susie and Jason.
Wow. Wow. Susie Perry. Incredible.
So that's the Phoenix 2 cutting edge AI model used by Tavus for obviously incredibly realistic avatar creation. And Jace, so much to unpack, really. But incredible the way that she looked, so real. It's blown my mind. And a slightly imperfect face, like there was a little blotches on the skin and everything, which made it feel more real. For me,
And as you referred to the room as well, those aspects, singing in the rain, what an interesting kind of, really kind of postmodern choice that is. It's like really reflexive of a sense of the past, like you would get in a film like Blade Runner. It's really,
yeah, and I think that was the point as well when you say the word past, because clearly you're going to ask about that poster, maybe, you know, in that room, and fully genned up on that and everything around it with the actors and so on. But when I asked about MotoGP, I mean, she's going to make no MotoGP pundit, because what she actually did was she reeled off some ex-world champions, and Joanne Mir, she mentioned, has got not a hope in hell next year of winning the world championship. And she didn't mention the current world champion either, in Jorge Martin. So that was quite interesting. And I think, you know, what do you feel about what she said about Xbox?
I thought a point about Xbox was the perspective of just about every journalist in the gaming space right now. I mean, I can't add to what she said. It's just instinct that would lead you to one conclusion or another. They're either going to release a handheld or they're not. I suspect, had I explored it with her, I would have just got the expected argument that the Steam Deck has, you know, opened up that gaming space, that there's been other experiments like the Rogue Ally and all the other kind of handheld Steam Deck-like devices that have, you know, well, the economics are difficult to predict. I mean, it was a very standard answer.
Yeah, because that's what's been fed in, and that's obviously, you know, wholly available on the internet too. But the fact that she looks so real is when you first see her, it is quite incredible. I mean, it would be amazing to go a step further with this and put ourselves, you know, do the twin thing and see how it works.
Here's the deal, right? I could see whereby, okay, if you're doing a lot of meetings, you would send an assistant to those meetings. A lot of executives do that in various, you know, capacities, right? And the idea of sending a virtual assistant to do it doesn't feel strange to me, really, not particularly strange. They would probably need to evolve a little.
Yeah, I suppose that because they were going to have to tell you what's been said in the meeting. They're going to have to summarize, aren't they?
And I just think it's really interesting in terms of the meeting of, you know, us and them, the meeting of humans and virtual humans, and the way that we're really good at hacking those hacking relationships, aren't we? Sort of using psychology to bend a person to our argument. I just find it. I think it is fascinating, and I definitely think using someone like Anna as an avatar in place of me at a meeting will become normal.
Yeah, you could be right. It's actually blown my mind seeing that.
Yeah.
So what I would like to say, though, for anybody listening and watching, let us know what your initial thoughts were and where you think this can go. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Wow.
Absolutely brilliant. Huge thanks to Tom, who's behind the scenes at the Gadget Show, for setting this one up, Sue. It's just so good. Such a great
He's
idea.
our Wizard of Oz, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then she thought we were all Tom.
Right, Susie, I'm really excited about this. For this week's Gadget of Interest, I've just seen something very 80s, all right? Casio have unveiled a unique wearable. I know that you know what this is. It's kind of escaped you. The CRW0011JR. Maybe need to work on that.
Is this a smart ring?
It's a smart ring that transforms one of Casio's iconic 1980s digital watches into a compact finger-worn device. But it doesn't make a ring that's a ring thing, and it just happens to have kind of, you know, watch functionality and maybe a tiny, almost imperceptible Casio logo. It's the actual watch.
What,
miniaturized.
on the ring, as a ring?
As a ring.
With the screen?
Yes, and loads of the functions. This retro-inspired ring features a tiny LCD screen that displays time, including 2 different time zones, as well as a stopwatch, an alarm, and even LED lighting. It's made, Susie, from stainless steel, like the original. It's waterproof. It weighs a surprisingly light 16 grams. And the ring is powered by a replaceable battery with an estimated life of 2 years. You don't even have to charge it, which I love. And so it doesn't feature the kind of either the advanced functionality of smartwatches, or the advanced functionality of smart rings, like, Samsung.
But it's retro.
But it's super
and
retro.
nostalgic.
Yeah, and here's the thing. This is the thing, right? I was looking at it. And yes, my retro sensibilities were being stimulated by it, but I did think, this is mad. This is ridiculous. I mean, what a thing. And then, Susie, I mentioned it to my watch-obsessed 14-year-old, Harrison. He loved it. And he started talking about putting it on his Christmas list. And I thought, isn't that interesting? What's that about? And his interest in it actually did spur me to research a bit more deeply, and hence why we've got it on the podcast. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I love nostalgia, and there's a massive market for it. I didn't think it would be 14-year-old watch obsessives, but I do wonder how well it will do. I think it launches early next year, doesn't it? 2025. It launches in Japan, I think, at the end of this year.
Right, okay.
And it'll be, I don't know, about 120 quid, something like that, I think.
Something like that. It's about $120. And but you know what? It's funny because they relaunched the Casios, didn't they? Various Casio watches. And you can get them in kind of swanky fashion shops now, can't you? Have you noticed? You get sort of like, luminous day-glow coloured ones, sort of like 80s orange and things like that. Or a really cool matte black, or a DPM patterned one. And so they are a thing, and they are a thing with young people. I have to be honest, I can see these doing well. I can see all kinds of different coloured ones, and, just becomes a new a new Casio sector. It's interesting.
Yeah, like a sort of dinky little retro device on your finger. Quite cool. But they should have called it something.
Well,
because
yes.
CRW 0011JR
1JR
ain't great.
No,
marketing department.
It doesn't cut it.
No. I've got something else from Casio. Right, it's called the Moflin. This is the AI-powered pet that we mentioned at the start of the show. So it was developed by Casio and Vanguard Industry in a new type of robot designed to mimic the emotional and physical responses of a living pet. That's the idea of it.
Which, as a proud cat lady, I'm guessing that you understand, right?
I'm into this idea. I love animals, as you know. I love having pets. It's a big part of my life. So this Moflin it's a fluffy guinea pig-like robot that reacts to its environment. It develops a unique personality through daily interactions with its owner. And as Moflin, I'd rename it, as Moflin interacts with you, its emotions evolve. And it may even form attachments, just like a real pet does. The robot's emotional state is visible via an app, but it responds through body language, such as movements, sounds, which, kind of adds to that feeling of companionship. I know you're not really a pet person, but I'm just going to
because they make me sneeze. They make me sneeze.
Because you're allergic, aren't you? Yeah. Well, this might be good for you.
Eh?
You'll have to get yourself a Moflin.
Yeah, but I wouldn't like a bit of a plonker, aren't I, with that on a lead down the coffee shop?
No, you won't. People will be amazed by it. In fact, we should film that. You should take one down the coffee shop.
Well, I did. I did. Sorry to butt in, but I did always fancy an Ibo. And the only thing that stopped me, because I was always a bit of a Sony fan, was the insane price. And they did actually relaunch those quite recently, didn't they? With some more advanced tech, and it is a sector that I've been interested in. I can see the value. I'm Susie. We started off this episode of the Gadget Show back in 2004, and I'm thinking Tamagotchi, turn of the noughties.
Yeah,
it's a physical Tamagotchi, isn't it?
It is. I mean, obviously, it's advanced, so it doesn't require feeding or walking like a Tamagotchi, but it does need attention because it can become stressed or anxious if it's ignored. You know, a bit like you there.
Yeah. Don't give it social media.
No, no. Its battery lasts for about 5 hours on a single charge, and it comes with the charging bed that doubles as a resting spot. So it's like its little pad is where it sleeps as well. And you can buy it, well, you can pre-order it in Japan. That's where it's coming from, obviously. And it'll be about £305 here with an optional subscription service for repairs and maintenance,
Oh,
so they say.
Stop
I
trying
know,
to
but you
make
don't.
us subscribe to everything.
But 300. I know, I hate that. But £300 quite pricey. But
Yeah.
I just thought it was worth a mention.
I think it's great.
But, you know, I haven't physically had one in my hands. I don't know how good it is. But like you, I thought the diversification was pretty interesting.
Okay, well, that's it for this week's episode. But before we go, a big shout out to JBL and their Tour Pro 3 earbuds. They really are game-changing earbuds, leagues ahead of the competition. With an amazing feature set and superb sound quality, you can be assured these are the perfect gift for any audiophile this Christmas.
Yeah, huge thanks to our partners, JBL. And if you want to get yourself a pair, there's a link in this episode. But from the two of us, it's goodbye until next week, when we're back for a very festive special edition of the Gadget Show podcast.
Can't wait. Have a great one. See you soon. And keep the comments coming in.
Yeah, do keep on commenting on whatever platform you're on, and we'll see you next time.
The Gadget Show podcast with Jason and Suzi was presented by Jason Bradbury and Suzi Perry off the telly. It was produced by Ewan Keel and Tom Clint and is a North One production.